short, but you can just
Oh, like those rubber bouncy balls.
Yeah, it's fuzzy and it hooks around your finger.
And we're just gonna be going off on various tangents throughout this. I feel like this is gonna be great.
Fuzzy balloon.
I don't know how that would curse, but I like.
Yeah, it cursed, but like
I guess it'd be like like you could definitely do like. Oh, what are those? I know liver.
Those like foil
balloons.
Do the foil balloons, then put like a cover over it?
Maybe.
Would it float though?
started.
I mean, there used to be liver balloons. So
Yeah,
okay. That's how the.
Should we get started or should we?
Yeah,
My
big
mom's
bladders.
friend,
like
she,
shots of balls.
It's possible.
Okay.
I just don't know like.
Oh, get-
Oh yeah.
I remember.
Okay, we'll get started in about a minute or so. If you can take your seats.
Don't forget to fidget. We calm down. This is our process.
We're so proud of you. Okay, the fidget ladies are down.
Fidget lady.
Why is it so greasy?
Why?
Fidget buttons.
Why? It is?
It was. Okay.
Okay, should we get started?
Yeah.
Is everyone ready?
Do it.
Sorry. I guess you guys ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all for being here. We are so excited about this opportunity. My name is Mallory Beckloff and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a licensed social worker and coordinate the GNO program at the University of Kansas Medical Center through the Department of Developmental Pediatrics and also part of the Kansas Len training program.
And I am Katie Schmenke. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an occupational therapy student at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and I'm completing my capstone project with Girls Night Out currently.
We are excited for these panelists to share their perspectives and experiences as autistic females.
So just a few notes before we get started. First, language. Today we'll be using identity affirming language, meaning we'll say autistic person or autistic people. We recognize that this isn't everyone's preference, but it is the panelist preference. So that's what we'll stick with today. As you walked in, you may have taken a fidget toy. This was something we decided to do after talking with the panelists in an effort to normalize fidgeting because, as they said, we all fidget. It's not just a neurodivergent thing. And then lastly, at your tables, you should see some pink slips of paper. Those are to write questions on throughout that you have for the panelists. And at about 3 o'clock, we will have someone come around and collect those from you guys. And then the last 10 minutes, we will try to get through as many as we can.
Great. So Katie and I are proud to introduce our panelists today. We have Avery, uses she, her pronouns and is an autistic person. Brooklyn Miller uses she, her, they, them pronouns and is neurodivergent. Gigi Vollenweider uses she, her, they, them pronouns, is an autistic person and a self-advocate. And Maeve Webb is gender questioning, uses he, they, she pronouns and is a proud neurodivergent. So we'll get started with the first question. What does being autistic mean to you? And we'll have Maeve start.
Well, okay, so I have found that in my experience, being autistic, it does not define me, but it does describe me. In the same way people say not all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Not all of my traits, not every part of me is autistic, but every trait of me that is autistic is still a trait. And so in another way that I've viewed it is all shades of red are still considered warm colors, but not all warm colors are just red. And so I don't know, these parts of me that are considered autistic or that are characteristic of an autistic person, they're not the autistic part. I am not the autism. I am the traits that have helped me be diagnosed with autism and that make up autism and its characteristics.
I believe that to me, being autistic is more of an adjective more than anything, much like how Maeve said. It definitely affects my life in some aspects, but it doesn't override my entire personality. I am still Gigi. I'm still who I am, and it shouldn't distract from my person. It just is a part of my personality in a sense, and is a part of my brain.
Yeah, well, I believe those were perfect descriptions, but autism is very much something that does not control me, but it does affect me. It's very much something that can affect, but it's also something I'm not thinking of 24/7. You know, it's just like I have always been autistic, but it might help like other people outside who might not understand why I do something for a specific reason. You know, it's just like I'm just me, you know?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Brooklyn. Me being autistic, I mean, I guess I've always been autistic, so I can't say what it means to me. It's just me. But I guess to other people, it gives them a reason as to why I do the things I do.
Okay, so the next question is, well, so when we first reached out to you guys to talk about what you thought was like most important to talk about during this panel, a lot of you mentioned representation and stereotypes of autism within the media. So that's going to make our next question. How do you feel about autistic representation in the media and how it impacts people's views of autistic people? Brooklyn, you can start us off.
Yeah, representation is such a huge thing for anything. With anyone who's probably not really used to being like supported or not used to seeing it out in the wider world, or who might not have the community or the support to really feel comfortable being expressive about it. But it's also very important to do it correctly because media is such a far-reaching thing. Media is not just one thing. It's not going to mean something to everybody the same way it might be to one person. And this is important, especially for something as for small kids versus like older generations as well, because we all start watching things like cartoons, you know, just like how to explain? It's kind of like character versus caricature. You don't want a stereotype for something of like important as a story. Like you don't want a checkbox for something when it's supposed to have meaning for someone, especially if it's someone's first time seeing that character. So when you see someone do like a very stereotypical thing for almost all media, it can become, hey, this is something that everyone does, when that's not really true. It's a spectrum of disorder. So it's very important to be aware and be very like careful about how you represent media. You don't want a checkbox. You want a character with layers and who's going to be important to somebody, or could be just as detrimental as well.
I believe that when autistic people are represented in media, it can be sometimes even better whenever it's not said or just implied, because sometimes when it's outright stated, they tend to go to the levels of caricature or stereotype. And a great example of kind of not of implying the autism, to use an older example, Radar from the TV show MASH. He is kind of innocent, but is very, he has hyper focus on his duties as a corporal, and is very technologically savvy. For a more modern example, Peridot from Steven Universe. She is very nerdy and gets very excited when talking about something that could equate to hyperfixation. But I feel like it's important to, going forward, if you want to create something autistic for a piece of media, whether it be a book, a movie, a TV show, what have you, that you research and get
input from actually autistic creators and to make sure that like you're not offending anybody, or if this doesn't go on like isn't like gonna harm somebody's view of an autistic person.
And honestly, I feel like people treat autism sometimes in the media like a light switch. You know, those little light knobs, you know, that some of those houses, some of the older ones, I think, they have those knobs where you can control how much light there is, or like a thermostat, you change the temperature. It's not just AC or heating. There's an in between. And I feel like in the media I've seen, they either have high functioning people that are just, they show all the stereotypes of autism, but that's it, or nonverbal. And there's no in between for that. And, you know, we want to be a bit more like the knob or the thermostat, because you don't want, yeah, like if it's too bright or too dark, there's always that in between, and there's just those little settings. And it also just kind of feels like when it's left to interpretation, it kind of helps you realize there are people with autism that don't know they have it. You know, I only just found out a year and a half ago, and that, you know, like that's okay. You know, I was born with autism and I didn't know until then, but that doesn't mean I didn't have it. Yeah, so you may not know you're sick at a certain point, but you're still sick. And kind of like that with autism, not comparing autism to a sickness. Maybe that was a bad, maybe that was a bad one. But yeah, like you don't know something until after it happens or after you realize it. That's still, it was still there. And I feel like leaving it up to interpretation makes them realize maybe later on they'll see, oh, I'm different. And there are more people like me, and just, you know, I'm unique. Suck it, world. I'm great. I am autistic. I'm amazing. Just like, you know, people embracing that side of them that they didn't really know how to name.
So I don't watch like a lot of TV shows, but from the media I've seen, it's either somebody who's autistic who is unable to function on their own, or they're just like a super genius. I don't see any in between of an autistic person who struggles but also succeeds at the same time. They're either doing one or the other.
Okay, so the next question, switching topics a little bit. We're going to talk about masking. So first, how would you explain what masking is to someone, and what has your experience been with masking? We'll have Brooklyn start.
Yeah, everybody masks a little bit in their life, just you act differently with certain people than others. Like if you're at a business meeting versus with your best friends, you know, everyone has that ability. But for autistic people, it's something you have to pull to the max all the time, every single day. And how I would compare it is if you were acting, but acting as a completely different person, where you have to always be aware of your surroundings and the people you're with. Otherwise, you will be outcasted. You will be judged to the point where you cannot function. So you have to hide who you are 24/7. And that's exhausting, you know? That completely ruins your self-image, how you grow, how you just interact with the people around your own age versus like how you're the people you need to like survive with. You know, it's just tiring.
I couldn't agree more, especially with the acting aspect. It's sort of like you have a script on you at all times, but you're playing like 50 different characters, and it's hard to keep up with what you're playing as. But how this is my experience with masking, sometimes you get used to it. And when you realize that you've been masking for such a long time, at least for me, I feel genuine exhaustion. Like it's hard for me to function after a full day of like going to the store, hanging out with friends, whatever. I feel like I like just need to be alone sometimes after I mask for that long. And it's sort of like I need to revert back to my original self. That's been my experience, but yeah.
I've always kind of seen masking as like, you know, those little kids in the cartoons trying on knight's armor. You know, it feels like they're, you know, these little kids that are maybe not little kids, but teenagers. They're going into battle and their first time trying on the knight's armor. And it's really heavy. And all these people are firing arrows at them and they're totally fine. But on the inside, they're like dying because it's hard to move. And I kind of feel like masking has kind of been like that. You're putting on all of these layers that they don't feel like they're truly you. And so people are firing all these different arrows about like, you know, different stereotypes, and you're just hiding in your little armor there. And then when you take it off, you feel so free. And it's like you can run around. And in the same way, people will, you know, when they train, they'll put on extra, like swimmers will put on extra pairs of clothes and then swim in them. And then when they swim without the clothes, they work so much harder and go faster. Kind of feels like with masking, that is how that goes for me. You know, like I take it off and then suddenly it feels like I could do anything in the rare occasion that I can actually, you know, feel safe or comfortable enough to unmask.
Well, I'm new to masking because for the first like forever years of my life until like right around the pandemic, I was just so unaware of social situations that I would see any interaction with another person as a friendship without realizing that they were just uncomfortable with me. And so around the time that the pandemic hit and I wasn't around people all the time, I realized that I didn't really have any friends. And then I just completely put on a mask and it was hard to get me out of my shell. I didn't talk to anybody at that point, and I just stopped talking in general. I remember I'd wear just like solid colored clothes because I didn't want to like make anybody think I'm weird for what I liked. But I mean, since coming to GNO, it's been a lot easier to like show who I am and be silly while also realizing the situation I'm in.
And then after quarantine, I know we all remember, we've all worn a COVID mask. It is not fun. And while it is kind of necessary, masking also feels necessary to a lot of autistic people, at least to me. And so I have found that while some parts of you, some parts of your face, some parts of your personality are still showing, the mask does cover a good amount of it, and you're hiding the parts that you feel are very important. Like I found it hard to tell if people were smiling during like when I had gone back to school after COVID and when we had to start masking. It's hard to tell how people were actually feeling, and I already have so much trouble with body language that I just found this is kind of how I feel on a daily basis. You know, it's hard to really tell what I'm like because I don't really take off that mask. And when I do, it's the whole social distancing thing.
Yeah.
It just, COVID feels like a great little parallel. Again, okay, I've got to stop using sickness.
No, you're good. I feel like that's a very like fair comparison though, because that is something that everybody here can relate to. And having something that like is an easy like signifier, that I'm pretty sure everybody here doesn't think that we're sick. Hopefully.
Yeah, and no one tells you to mask, but people don't really realize how kids can always tell when they're being excluded. They might not have the words for it, or they might not be able to explain why they feel it, but kids are a lot more aware than people realize. And kids want to be so, like, when you're young, you have this childish feeling of the adults know what they're doing. The adults, I can trust them with anything. So when you feel excluded, you're like, what's the problem with me? So masking is just kind of like a survival thing for a really long time.
So on the same topic, how could people in the community help you guys feel more comfortable being yourself and not masking? Gigi.
I honestly feel like this would be fairly simple for people to get, but I guess some people just don't know. Just respect the other person and be patient with them, because society has told us to mask time and time again that it feels sometimes daunting to take off that metaphorical mask and be my authentic self with another person. Just being respectful of them just being freely like stimming or something, understanding their sensory needs, or if they need to go and take a break. Just, it really comes down to being patient, at least to me. And everybody's needs will be different, but I feel like the sole purpose of that is to be patient and understand.
Just kind of treating them like you would a friend with anxiety or really bad insecurities, you think of that, you treat your friends, like they're a normal person. They are the same person to you as anybody else, but you still kind of know what to do if someone has an anxiety attack or if someone is feeling really insecure. Close friends usually know what to do. And so I feel like the same kind of with masking, if you're just able, and you don't have to be able to tell at first, but if you kind of learn like, oh, this person is just a little bit, feels like they're not truly being them, like you don't have to talk to them in front of everyone, but maybe like just, or talk to them at all, just, acknowledge like they are more than they are showing. And I guess we're all like that a little bit. And, we're all more than our masks. And I guess kind of just acknowledging that is the first step, the first step to healing in anything or to fixing anything or dealing with something is kind of acknowledging that it's there. You can't solve a problem if you don't know that you have a problem, unless you accidentally solve it, done that before. But you can't intentionally solve a problem if you don't know that you have a problem. And so in the same way, you can't help a person who is masking, you can't intentionally help them or reach out to them if you can't acknowledge and accept they are masking and that they are more than what they show on the surface.
Yeah, we're not telling you to immediately understand it either. It's okay if you're still learning about the process or you don't 100% understand. That's why communication in general is so important. Like, as long as you're actually trying to be there for somebody, trying to be their safe person, it's okay not to immediately understand or get it. It's the effort that we really appreciate as well.
I honestly feel like some people that mask, like I still don't completely understand it, and it's like, oh, they have a name for it, masking, and you don't always realize you're doing it yourself. You don't always understand, but acknowledging it is just kind of that one step forward. And even just knowing that you don't understand, like you don't know everything, you don't understand everything. And so even just acknowledging, I don't completely understand this. Can you tell me more? That is really helpful, especially in math.
For me, I think people should just be more aware of what's going on with masking. Because the reason we mask is because we don't want other people to be outside of their comfort zones when interacting with them. But that puts us outside of our comfort zones. And I think, especially if you're with friends or teachers, you can work on a 50-50 to where you're a little bit outside your comfort zone. You've got some things that you control, but there's other things you let free. And this other person has to work outside their comfort zone just a little bit so that you can both accommodate each other. Yeah.
Okay. Thinking about your current or past teachers, therapists, or healthcare providers, how could they better support you when it comes to dating and relationships?
Yeah. I feel like whenever people think of autism, they always in dating, they always think of it as some sort of social pariah or something that is used as cringe culture. I feel like should be normalized that autistic people date and some have sexual relationships, some don't. I feel like just like a normal romance between a neurotypical person and another neurotypical person, it should just be a normal thing. And understanding that some people's relationships with dating might be different than others. Like, for instance, somebody could, like, I'm gonna use a little bit of my experience here. For me personally, as an autistic person, it's hard for me to see gender. So I'm more attracted to the person and not the gender that they identify with. And so but people need to kind of I feel like some people don't understand that and just take it, oh, that person's in love with the other person. And it comes again down to respect and understanding and being there to listen. And yeah, don't make, that into cringe culture, please. That'd be really nice.
I also kind of feel like people they don't realize autistic people, they will, at first some people say, autistic people, they can come across as narcissistic at times. I've had a lot of people call me narcissistic when I was just following talking to myself or following a hyperfixation or something. And so I feel like just acknowledging that, just like they will have, kind of if anyone's seen Tick Tick Boom, Andrew Garfield's amazing. So kind of that one song with Therapy where it's like the one called Therapy where he's like, I'm not mad, but I feel bad because you feel bad because I feel bad because you feel bad about this one thing. And I said this because you said this. And I then said this, and then you said this, all because I did this one thing. It kind of feels like there's this back and forth, just kind of I feel like dating an autistic person, people just need to understand it's not, we are not, not that we're not the bad guy here, like we're not all perfect, but kind of that in between, we are not, we are different. And just like all other people, we are unique, and that just sometimes it takes a little bit of time to adjust to that.
And for me, that all just boils down to we're human, it's just some people have this toxic idea of autistic people have like a childish tendency. So they have childish relationships. And yeah, I might act a little like young with my interest and stuff, but I'm an adult person with adult interest as well, who can have adult relationships. And whether that involves like either the romantic or the sexual side, it really is just boils down to respect, communication, all that stuff. But the thing is too, it's just like everybody's different and it's very easy to like box people in with like expectations and stuff, but really it's just boils down to, again, we're all human.
And like you'll normalize people with depression dating or people with anxiety. And I have both, so I'm not dissing any of
Same
that,
here.
not putting any of that down. But I feel like if we were to just realize like everybody has needs and everybody has those little quirks that are a little bit different that may be seen as problematic when in reality we have the best intentions at heart. So I feel like just in general, people seeing that some things don't always come across the way that they're supposed to, whether you're neurodivergent or not, autistic or have ADHD, ADD, depression, anxiety, anything. Or even if you don't have any of those, we all have those little parts of us, those little patterns and habits that may come across as problematic when in reality we meant nothing by it. And I feel like just acknowledging that for anyone in dating or even just in platonic relationships or even people you pass in the street, it should just kind of take everything with a grain of salt, not everybody, just like the same way they say you don't know what everybody else is going through. you also don't know how they think and how they view the world. And so knowing that maybe they didn't mean anything by it. And sometimes you can tell that they mean something by it. But just, being able to tell, like, give them the benefit of the doubt, because you never know.
My answer is vastly different. I'm saying I'm unsure. I still don't know what a friendship or a healthy relationship looks like. I'm still trying to learn that myself, so I can't really offer solutions to, a problem I'm still trying to comprehend.
And we're human, we all crave connection. And I feel like with autistic people, we crave it even more because it's so easy to like feel disconnected from the community that's supposed to, we just naturally want to be with people, whether that be in a relationship or a platonic. It's just, we all go crazy without it for a period of time. So it's just something in us that wants us to connect with other people. And sometimes for autistic people, we just can't do it the way other people just can. So it's just different.
Yeah, no man is an island. There may be several peninsulas, but no man is like truly an island. And people, autistic people don't have anything against other people. We don't want to avoid other people completely. It may feel like that sometimes, but everyone in their life at some point has felt a connection with a person. Even children, they've connected with their parents at some point, hopefully. And, we all find these little connections, whether they're romantic or platonic. And so just,
Maeve, I'm gonna have to pause you there just so we can keep going because you guys are doing great though. During past conversations, some of you mentioned negative feelings towards the show Love on the Spectrum and how it shows autistic dating and relationships. Can you expand on this and share your perspective with the audience? Gigi.
Now to debrief real quick, if you don't know what the show is, it's kind of a sort of reality dating show for autistic people, but the way sometimes it's filmed and viewed is kind of on the infantilizing side. The way it kind of treats us, it feels like it's kind of like they're in on a joke that we are not in part of. Like they put on kind of cutesy, cringy music in the background while they kind of have this narrator kind of do an infantilizing voice while they're on this date having a real relationship. And it kind of feels like they're treating us as a joke. It's not that the actual people involved are the joke. It's more of the way they framed it, and that it feels like they don't take us seriously.
and it just kind of, like, at least in my experience, it's nothing like what I've seen. I guess everybody's dating experience is kind of different. But I feel like they did put, at least the only scenes I remember, maybe that's just me, are the ones about the caregivers and the parents and stuff like that. And so they're not really completely focusing on the autistic person, which is great to, acknowledge the caregivers but they're also kind of feels like they're zooming in on the fact that this person does not live alone, and that they have a little bit of extra support, which is totally fine, but it doesn't always feel like they're doing that. And so, sorry, my senses are weird. This is going to sound really weird the way I describe it, but the person's voice to me sounds like whipped cream in a can, like the can of whipped cream just pressed right up against the wall. It's got that little bit of metallic, but also like light and fluffy, but liquid. And it's the way I describe things is.
But it weirdly makes sense
Yeah,
though.
I got it.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like you're kind of making it all light and fluffy, sort of. And then you're also kind of just adding in a little bit of that like metallic truth, like being autistic and dating is not always very easy. And sometimes it's kind of hard to get out there. But it also, so when I used to live in Maryland, and they had this thing called zoo cams. They filmed the zoo and they would put it online with all the animals. And some parts kind of felt like the zoo cams. It's like, here are these autistic people in their natural habitat. Hiding under a blanket with a phone.
Maybe you're doing amazing, but we only have like 6 minutes
Oh, wow.
left. So I want to make sure Avery and Brooklyn get a chance to talk on this.
Yeah, it's kind of just, I hate that show so much, but it's very babying. And it was such a shame because like a big supporter, someone who supported me was so excited to show me. And it was just like, it was this bonding thing for a quick second. It's just like, oh yeah, this thing where I could identify with, and it'd be cool because I like connection. I think it's super interesting. And then I watched the show and I tried so hard to like it. I tried to force myself to like it, but I couldn't. It was a terrible show. It was bad. And it was such a shame because the premise can be good. It could work, but with an adult lens, because it was more like, oh, look at these people. Look at how different they are and how silly this all is. And I'm just like, oh, ooh, it was,
So I actually have not watched the show and I hadn't heard about it until this. And I was going to watch it. And then I realized that the question was literally, why do you hate the show? So I was like, well, I'm just not going to watch it. Because I mean, why do we need a dating show for people specifically with autism? Like, you don't see dating shows about people with like Down syndrome or schizophrenia. So like, how different are we? I don't think we're so different that people need to watch us. I don't know. I'm not big on reality TV or anything anyway. So
back to the zoo cam.
yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get to our last questions before we start reading the ones from the audience. During our conversations leading up to this panel, we heard you say things about feeling nervous but excited about this opportunity. Why do you think having this panel was so important, and what do you hope people leave here knowing? Avery, we'll have you start.
I think this panel is important because people need to understand real perspectives instead of just like studies, because studies help, but it's like the bat thing from earlier. You know, people can learn all about what it means to be a bat, but they never will be a bat. They won't know. But you can get very close, and it's good to talk about this stuff so people can get close and understand better.
Yeah, and it's just so much different hearing, like, if you hear someone out in the world is autistic like you, it's just like, oh yeah, I know that for a logical fact. But it's so much different to just like interact with someone who's gone through similar experiences as you. It's so different to like actually connect and communicate. It's like going through your whole life missing something that you couldn't quite describe, and then all of a sudden feeling whole again. It's almost undescribable how completing it feels.
I've known people almost my entire life who are autistic like me, but have grown up in a household that sees it like a pariah or a plague that shouldn't be talked about or discussed, and view it like it's a bad thing. And you have to think for a second, how do you think that feels to that person? If this panel can help at least one person in a family like that understand what it's like from a perspective like ours, maybe it can help them be more empathetic.
So just kind of like a positive pyramid scheme. That's how we put it. We call it the pyramid dream. And just if we help one or two people and they help a few people, they help a few people. In the end, we've made a huge difference. Even it's like the problem, would you rather have a penny a day doubling for a year or $1 million at once? In the end, helping 1 million people or helping people 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 in the end really makes a huge difference. And just showing people, like every time I tell people I have autism, every once in a while there's that, is that contagious? Or you're too smart to have autism, or you don't look like you have autism. And so just, like even just raising a little bit of awareness for that. Even just getting asked if autism is contagious. Where do you come up with that? But even if just being asked that, even just a little bit less, because if I hear it again, I'm going to lose my mind.
Okay, so now we will do a few questions from the audience, as many as we can. The first one is, how has meeting other neurodivergent peers changed your perception of yourself?
Oh my goodness. So of course, I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 2. They knew I probably had that one, but they couldn't get me tested. But I was only diagnosed with autism about a year or so ago. And so I'd never really met anybody else who was neurodivergent. And when I came here, I had like such a lack of confidence that even showing up at the park on a sunny day, I was in like full sweatpants and a sweatshirt and sunglasses to just hide myself. And I mean, here I am up on the stage doing a panel, and I never thought I would get to the point of confidence and learning that I'm not a weird horse. I'm a very perfectly normal zebra, you know?
I've just kind of found I have never met a single person at GNO that I have not loved as a human being with all of my heart, flaws and all. Like, I guess we've all kind of learned to work together in this little network. You know, we are almost like a physical search engine. You know, we are all kinds of different information. We have all kinds of sources. We are all kinds of views and all kinds of ideas and opinions, and yet we can all come together in such a way that honestly, someone needs to make a reality show about GNO, because dang, I would watch that assuming I wasn't in it. I would, like, if we don't change the world, I will be shocked.
I feel so happy to know that there are people that are similar to me. For the longest time, I felt like I was kind of an outcast, especially since I was homeschooled for a majority of my life, and by my own volition. I love homeschool, but it just feels nice to know that there are other people like me who understand what it's like, and it's very validating in getting to hear their experiences as well and getting to share that.
Yeah, before GNO, I was mostly like in this routine rut where I would do the same thing every single day. And I thought like once I graduated, I was pretty much done growing and done like, I'm a person now. This is who I am. But then I went to my first GNO, and like before I meet a group of people, I'm like going through a script of pre-made stuff and just like, okay, I have to respond with this, you know, just prepping up like I normally do. But then I finally get there and I finally interact with other people. I'm like, this is weirdly comfortable. This is what interaction's supposed to feel like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just kind of script out like you think of every possible scenario, like every way that you could answer every question. It's kind of like Infinity War, Doctor Strange going through all the possible futures. It's me going through all the questions or all the ways that I could get through a conversation. And with GNO, it's like, oh, no more time stone. Bye. And it's really liberating to know like there are more people like me, and even just their experiences with autism or masking or trying to predict conversations. People are unpredictable, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Okay, I have another one here. It's a little long. Stick with me. I think it's a good one. So as parents and providers, what can we do to help our autistic loved ones and students learn socially appropriate behavior without forcing them to mask? Or should we put such an emphasis on socially appropriate behavior?
I have found
All at once.
Uh,
I think there's a line to be drawn. I don't know where that line is, because I think kids should learn, you know, how to interact without, you know, screaming or getting up and rolling around, because that's kind of what I did. But I think you can't teach it without teaching them to mask. You have to be patient. And sometimes, like I know for my autistic screening, they had to show me videos of people interacting, and I would just sit there. They'd be like, "Did you do anything wrong in that situation?" And that's when I kind of realized that I didn't really know. So I think teaching kids early what is socially acceptable, because I think there's some like social norms that are more important than others.
I only recently found out that like okay, so I know everybody is a little bit scared that AIs are going to take over the world. But I have found that just talking online, there's this one site, you can make an AI, it can be a fictional character or someone you make up completely. And they respond a lot like an actual human. They are going to take over the world. But it's really just finding resources, finding what works for them, like maybe talking to an AI won't work for everyone. And it definitely won't help you learn body language or anything, but just learning like how your tone matters or how word choice can affect different, just teaching them through different tools, even if it's just a small aspect of, social correctness and politeness and whatnot, just a little bit. Because when you're putting together a puzzle, you don't put it together all at once. Even Rome wasn't built in a day. You build it up small pieces. And so if you can build it up in small pieces, then they at least have something.
Yeah. And the important thing too is like trying to dig out your own biases too, because it's very easy to confuse like how much are you trying to prepare your child to give them the tools for the world, and how much is it you putting expectations on them to how you think they should act. And it's very important to try and divide the two, and it's going to take some communication, patience, understanding, and most importantly, just loving them and accepting them for who they are at the end of the day, because that's your kid and they love you more than anything. That's the most important thing too, is they love you. So it's important to give back that love just as much, because that's all, at the end of the day, that's what we all really need.
The thing that I would kind of, for this question, I would first ask you, whoever put this question in, what do you think those social norms are? And do any of them include being kind, being respectful, and being patient with another person? Because I feel like those are the three fundamentals of kind of life and being a loving person. And think about that as you teach this kid, either if you're a teacher or a parent or a guardian, just think about, how am I going to like show them the love and kind of use myself as an example, because kids learn from your actions. And I feel like it's important to look at, if you are doing a neurodivergent trait, don't try and hide that. Think about it, embrace it. There's a reason why we gave y'all fidget toys when you guys walked through the door. Everything has a reason, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. And just to be a kind person and teaching them. That's my response.
How do you guys feel about the idea of teaching neurotypical people to interact socially with neurodivergent people?
Ooh, we always, when we're younger, we have all these presentations on bullying, and maybe I had a few on ADHD at my old school. They had several presentations on bullying and ADHD, ADD, and all of that. And so if we're willing to do that and see kind of both sides of bullying, like maybe you don't know what's going on in their life. In the same way, maybe we could just teach them a little bit about autism and make them realize it's not contagious. Cannot stress that enough. And that also just, like we're still normal people. We have a different part of us, but we are still, normal people. And we deserve to be treated as such in the same way you would treat anybody, literally anybody else. So just treat us like you would treat anybody else, and just kind of teach them we're people, like we are humans. We're human. I've said that several times and I will say it again. We're human.
Yes. One thing I feel like if you were to make like a presentation to show neurotypicals of what neurodiversity and autism is like, make sure to specify that it's a spectrum and not on a linear line. It's sort of like a circle of generated stats. It's kind of predetermined and we can't really choose it. And sometimes we don't have control over it, especially like sensory issues or sorry, I'm blanking out on another one. I don't know, but mainly like that's just an example. But just understand that it's going to be different for each person, and not if you met one autistic person, you haven't met anybody else. You just met that one person. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Patience, patience, patience. At the end of the day, basic human kindness and patience, because again, it is a spectrum. And one person's comfort is not someone else's comfort. And one person's discomfort is not another person's discomfort. Honestly, it all just takes patience.
Yeah. I was gonna say kind of the same thing. Because autism is such a big spectrum, I think teaching kids to know that social norms are usually neurotypical norms. So while making eye contact might seem like a crucial part of conversation, we should teach them that sometimes some people just can't make eye contact, and that doesn't mean they're being rude, and not to view every situation through the eye of a neurotypical person. Because I mean, I can feel like I'm being completely polite while somebody else thinks that, you know, I'm focused on my crochet, whatever, and instead of listening to them. So I think just teaching them that the way they interact isn't the way that everybody else is going to interact.
I kind of think of that one episode of The Office where Michael cooks his foot.
Oh my
He did cook it. He didn't step. No, he cooked it. And so he's in the crutches and he's like, all right, I'm going to show you disabled people. You know, I just kind of feel like that's how some people socially treat autism. He's got all these expectations for the guy in the wheelchair. And he makes the joke, right? He asks, how did you get into the wheelchair? And he says, same way I did every morning, just got out and rolled up. And I feel like if people make a joke about the same way that Michael Scott thought it was like, don't laugh, stop laughing, guys. I feel like just kind of autistic people like that interacting, don't be a Michael Scott. Just that should be a rule
Thank you,
of life.
guys. Okay, so I want to thank our panelists for being so confident. We're so proud of you. Thank you, Katie. And huge shout out to all of our volunteer GNO facilitators, Dr. Jameson, GNO program, and to all of you for helping expand GNO to make it better and sharing your perspectives. We're so grateful to have all of you in our lives. So great job. And I know the conference is over now. I was asked to make sure everybody leaves their name tag with their magnet at the front, on the front tables. They're not for you to take home. I know. They just need the magnet part back. So
Understandable.
I'm guessing where's Sean? I don't know where he is. Thank you
Remember,
all for
folks, don't
being
be a
here.
Michael Scott.
Yes,
Don't be a Michael Scott.
Great job.
I need
That's
that on a
like moral
t-shirt.
of the story.
Thank you.
Avery, I was so proud of you when you
Thank you